In this chapter, King offers us a contrast between the silver rule and the golden rule as he examines intellectual acts of fair-mindedness and charity. Versions of both rules appear in various traditions around the world. The silver rule says, don't do to others what you wouldn't want done to you. Notice the negative phrasing. The golden rule has positive phrasing. Do to others as you would have them do to you. How do we go about implementing these rules? The starting point would be to achieve clarity on what we want for ourselves, what we would have done to us. Put that way, it sounds selfish, doesn't it? Perhaps we have to start with a form of egoism. Broadly speaking, there are two forms of egoism. Psychological egoism is a descriptive thesis that claims that people act in their own self-interest. As a descriptive claim, it is asserting that this is the way the world is. When we look at people in the world, we see that people act in their own self-interest. It may be that they say they are not acting in their own self-interest, but they are acting in the interest of some other person, but in fact, they are acting in their own self-interest. The other form of egoism is a normative thesis. Ethical egoism claims that people ought to act in their own self-interest. Put that way, egoism sounds like egotism, pure and simple selfishness. If we see egoism as the same thing as selfishness, it will make little sense to call it an ethical theory. Here's something else that seems to make little sense. Holding to ethical egoism, if one believes psychological egoism to be true. If people simply do act in their own self-interest, then there is no reason to tell them that they ought to act in their own self-interest. If we wanted to be egoists of either type, where would we start? As with the silver and golden rules, the starting point is with ourselves. We start with a conception of what is in our own self-interest. If we're going to understand egoism, we have to remember this caveat. According to those who assert the truth of psychological egoism, it is a fact that we do act in our own self-interest. Simple consideration of the world, maybe even of our own lives, will tell us that cannot be true. There are too many times when we and others do not act in our own self-interest. But the claim fits better with the caveat. We act in line with what we take to be our own self-interest. There's an essential epistemic element here. We each have a take on what is in our own self-interest. This take is refined through time and experience. This take is also imperfect. Most, if not all of us, remember a time when we took something to be in our own self-interest, but we do not now take it to be so. Our sense of what is in our own self-interest can be refined and corrected. Which intellectual virtues are most closely connected with discovering what is in our own self-interest? How do intellectual virtues help us keep the pursuit of our own self-interest from collapsing into pure selfishness? But maybe we don't see a problem with pure selfishness. In fact, we rather enjoy it. That's why so many people are selfish. It brings comfort and joy. Well, it does at least sometimes. The comfort and joy we experience in being selfish tends to end when we discover that we're not the only people in the world. It might be that before we acquire a theory of mind, we don't recognize that there are other people. Sure, there are bodies moving and speaking in our vicinity, but without a theory of mind, we assume they are part of an inanimate universe existing for our benefit or to get in the way of the achievement of our acts of will. When we discover other people who also have egos and interests of their own, we start on the road of including the interests of others within our own interests. Because there are other people, both other people who matter to me because of relational closeness and other people to whom I am not yet attached in any way other than proximity, what I think of as my own self-interest is never purely my own. Let's consider a simple example. I have a wife and 3 kids. There are 5 humans in my family. Each of these humans is an independent actor with interests that do not completely overlap. It is in my interest to be happy. I like being happy. It is in the interest of each of the other humans in my family to be happy. They like being happy too. If one or more of the other humans in my family is unhappy, that unhappiness impinges on my happiness. Therefore, if it is in my interest to be happy, and my happiness is at least partly contingent on the happiness of the others in my family, then what I would call our own interests are never purely our own. They are always enmeshed with others to some degree. The 5 humans in my family do not live in a cave shut off from the rest of the world. In fact, my 2 youngest kids are off making their way in the world. In the course of my daily life, I encounter other people. In the course of teaching, in the course of my day job, in the course of life in a community. If some people I am around are having none of their interests satisfied, say they are languishing in poverty or are lonely and friendless, that lack on their part can influence their actions in the world. Inasmuch as I am a part of their world due to proximity, our interests are enmeshed to at least a small degree. If my interests are going to be satisfied, it will help if I contribute to a social order that increases the likelihood that the interests of others will be satisfied. There's an added benefit of recognizing the reality of social life and living in community. I'll turn to that in a little bit. Let's go back to the silver and golden rules. King starts with the former. He offers an intellectual version which says, in intellectual activities, don't do to others what you wouldn't want done to you. Just as the silver rule assumes it is possible to harm others, the intellectual silver rule assumes that there is such a thing as intellectual harm, and that it is something we can inflict on others. King provides examples of such harms on page 230. Here's his list. Unequal access to information or education, misrepresentation of our views, an unequal opportunity to express our views or to be taken seriously, biased assessments of the evidence for our views, blameworthy, inaccurate, or unreasonable assessments of our intelligence, our intellectual character, of our motives. Have any of you experienced any of those intellectual harms that King mentions? I bet you have. I know I have. On the next page, King brings up the example of G.E. Moore, an important philosopher in the first half of the 20th century. Moore differentiated between 2 ways of emphasizing the same words. Here's the 2 sentences. It is important that my beliefs be true, versus it is important that my beliefs be true. Do you hear the difference? We have a tendency to see our beliefs, our convictions, our way of seeing the world as extensions of ourselves. Because they are a part of us, it is natural to defend them as we would defend other aspects of ourselves. When we say and act on the claim that it is important that my beliefs be true, the emphasis is an expression that the beliefs are ours. They define us. They are part of us. They are inseparable from our identity. Any attack or challenge directed at our beliefs is an attack on us. But what if we hold our beliefs just a little more loosely? In most cases, it will be difficult, if not impossible, to accept complete differentiation between our beliefs and our sense of self, except in the most trivial matters. If we are pursuing intellectual virtue, we are learning the difference between feeling right, feeling like what we say is true, and it being the case that what we believe is true. We're learning to see that it is not our acts of believing that make something true. It is our acts of believing that shape our identity. And that to the degree that we submit to truth, there's a greater possibility that our identity can be in accord with the truth, with what is. In differentiating between these 2 ways of looking at this single sentence, Moore evidenced a true hunger for truth. In the pages that follow, King builds from this to develop 5 guidelines. Well, maybe 5.5 guidelines. These are worthy of your attention. Which of these have you already adopted in your pursuit of intellectual virtue? Are there any of these guidelines that you find especially challenging? I mentioned above that there's an additional benefit that comes from recognizing that we live in community. We can interact with people. We can get feedback and correction. Do we want correction? Are we more interested in feeling right or in being right? If it's the latter, we'll have to set aside a desire to always feel right. When we live in community and interact with other people, we can ask them questions. We can listen to them, even as they question us. We don't have to project our assumptions and ways of understanding the world onto them. Though the silver and golden rules are a good starting point, to the degree they assume we don't interact with people, they fall short. Don't do to others what you don't want done to you. Do to others what you want done to you. As these rules are formulated, we don't, strictly speaking, have to know anything about other people. All we must know is what we want and what we don't want. It might be that the people around us want exactly the same things we do, exactly the way we want them, but they may not. When we take time to talk to them and get feedback, there are other rules that might prove useful. Do to others what they want you to do to them, and maybe don't do to others what they don't want you to do to them. Again, these rules aren't perfect, but having them in our toolbox along with the silver and golden rules will likely be beneficial. I'll close my discussion of this chapter with a final topic. King mentions the problem of straw manning in an argument. Straw manning is when we construct a weak version of our opponent's case and then attack that. It's made of straw, full of exaggerations and weaknesses, ignoring evidence. So it's easy to knock down and destroy. Straw manning is a failure of fair-mindedness and charity. There's an alternative to straw manning that's been developed in recent years, steel manning. When we steel man an opponent's argument, we try to make the best case we can by our standards, setting aside weaknesses and flaws that may exist in their presentation. We might even come up with more evidence that they have missed that might support their position and make it stronger. When you argue with someone, would you like them to steel man your case? Maybe, but maybe not. Sometimes in the act of steel manning, just as when we straw man, we're not dealing with the argument our interlocutor has made, but with an argument we've created from their materials, but in our own image. We can misshape their argument, even go in a completely different direction than they did. The goal overall is to pursue knowledge, truth, and understanding. When we do this together, fair-mindedly listening and responding to others with charity, we are more likely to achieve our goal.